Okay, so today we're doing a historical deep dive, but maybe not the kind you'd expect. We're not really looking at the big official histories.
No, not at all. We're zeroing in on something much more personal, the Civil War experience seen through the eyes and the memories of just one soldier.
That's right. Sergeant E.S. Vernon, Company F, 78th Ohio Volunteer Infantry.
And what's fascinating is our source material. It's this amazing collection of his own writings, his accounts published over, well, decades actually, mostly in the National Tribune.
Yeah, that's the big newspaper for veterans for
Exactly. Huge circulation. And Vernon was writing for them from like 1884 all the way up to 1921, almost 40 years of recollections.
So our mission here is to kind of pull out the reality of being a soldier back then from his perspective. The chaos, the sheer luck involved sometimes, and maybe even the small arguments or debates that stuck with these guys long after.
Vernon's perfect for this. I mean, his service record is incredible, enlisted right at the start, 1861. Yeah, it served the entire war. Discharged a sergeant in 65. He was with the 3rd Division, 17th Corps, Logan's old division, famous unit.
Saw action under Grant.
Oh, yeah, Fort Donelson, Vicksburg. He was there.
Yeah.
And then with Sherman from Big Shanty, Georgia, right through the Carolinas to the end, he actually claimed he was with his regiment in every single fight.
Every single one. That's quite a claim.
It is, but it means he saw the whole sweep, the grand campaigns, but also the stuff in between.
Right. And that's what we want to unpack. Not the strategy maps, but the everyday, sometimes, frankly, bizarre moments. And maybe we should start with a classic example of, let's call it military problem solving. Or maybe delinquency, the mystery of the burning cotton gin.
Ah, yes, the cotton gin. Okay, so this takes us back to March 1863. They're at Vista Plantation, Mississippi. Vernon's brigade, that's the 2nd Brigade, 3rd Division, 17th Corps, they'd just gotten back from this short mission.
Where have they been?
Just upriver, Eagle Bend, about 20 miles above Vicksburg, reinforcing another position. Quick trip.
Okay, so they get back to their camp.
And they find a problem, a very basic human problem. While they were gone, some other regiments had moved through or camped nearby.
And helped themselves.
Exactly. All their bedding, gone. Carried off. So these guys have literally nothing soft to sleep on.
Not ideal. So what do they do?
Well, Vernon says large groups, delegations he calls them, from the Ohio regiments, the 20th, 68th, and his own 78th, decided they needed boards.
Sensible enough. Where do you get boards on a plantation?
From buildings. In this case, a cotton gin and some other structures nearby. Conveniently, or maybe inconveniently, located pretty close to General Logan's headquarters.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Vernon has this vivid memory. He says he saw the boards and shingles flying, just guys ripping lumber off these buildings.
Criticably, this didn't end well.
Not entirely. The gin catches fire, probably sparks from lanterns, or maybe just carelessness in the dark, dismantling, and boom, immediate reaction from command.
Right. Order comes down.
Instantly. Everyone who took lumber, report to Regimental HQ, now. With the lumber.
Ah! So they got caught. What was the punishment?
They had to take all this wood they'd scavenged and literally line it up along the road heading towards brigade headquarters. A sort of public shaming, making them display their loot.
And Vernon's final thought on this, years later.
Just a simple question. Who paid for it? He apparently never found out if the soldiers were docked pay or if the army compensated the owner or if it just vanished into the wartime bureaucracy.
It really shows that fuzzy line between authorized supply and just taking what you need, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that same incident had another layer, too. Vernon mentions, almost as an aside, that when they first got back, they also stumbled upon some sanitary stores.
Sanitary stores. What were those? Not like cleaning supplies.
No, this is important. These were supplies from the U.S. Sanitary Commission. Think of it as sort of the Red Cross of the Civil War. A massive civilian relief organization.
Ah, okay. So not army issue, not private goods.
Right. They provided things like extra food, medical supplies, clothing, blankets, stuff specifically for the soldiers' well-being, especially the sick and wounded. Huge operation, funded by donations back home.
So what happened with these stores?
Well, the soldiers, including Vernon's group, mistook them for settler goods. The private merchants who sold extras to soldiers.
Right, like whiskey or tobacco or better food, but for profit.
Exactly. So they thought, oh, sutler stuff. And Brennan says they issued out in grand shape. Basically, they looted it and distributed it amongst themselves.
Oh, that probably didn't go over well either.
No. He mentions getting into trouble for it the next morning. because looting sanitary commission supplies meant taking aid intended specifically for suffering soldiers.
Ah.
Much more serious than raiding a private settler, or even maybe dismantling a cotton gin.
It really highlights how confusing things must have been on the ground. You don't always know what you're taking.
Precisely. The fog of war wasn't just about combat. It was about logistics, supplies, knowing who owned what. And that drive for basic comfort, for survival, could lead you into trouble. Or sometimes it led to unexpected rewards.
Okay, let's jump forward a bit then, to the Atlanta campaign, summer of '64. Another story about, well, rations, or lack thereof.
Right. This is late June '64. Vernon's company F, 78th Ohio, they get sent out on picket duty near a place called Brush Mountain.
Picket duty, so standing guard, basically.
Yeah, outpost duty.
Yeah.
Usually pretty routine. They were supposed to bring cooked rations with them, but they figured, it's just picket, probably a quick shift. So they gambled.
How so?
They only took their guns, ammo, and canteens filled with water, left the food behind, thinking they wouldn't need it right away.
Let me guess. Bad gamble.
Terrible gamble. Almost immediately, the order changes. Deploy as skirmishers, advance toward Brush Mountain, and it's pouring rain.
Oh, great. So now they're advancing, hungry, and soaking wet.
Yep. They push forward about 2 miles, and then they find them. Heavy Confederate fortifications dug in on Brush Mountain.
So what happens? A firefight.
Their captain, A.L. Waller, decides to go for it, orders a charge.
Into heavy fortifications, without support.
Well, it turns out the gamble paid off this time. The Confederates had shifted their main force, expecting an attack somewhere else. The works were actually only lightly held, just a picket line, really.
So they took the position.
They did, relatively easily, but that's not the best part of the story.
Ron.
Captain Waller and a few of his guys, Vernon, names John Tanner, Lou Huffman, Joel Reunion, they push on a little further down the other side of the mountain,
Yeah.
and they come back with treasure. A captured supply wagon, 4 mules still attached, and a Confederate sergeant as a prisoner.
The supply wagon. What was in it? Please say food.
Exactly. Cooked beef and warm cornbread, enough for the whole company.
So the guys who gambled on not bringing rations ended up getting a hot meal courtesy of the enemy.
That's right. Vernon calls it a good dinner. It's funny, isn't it? Sometimes recklessness or poor planning just works out. The immediate need, hunger, maybe drove that charge as much as any tactical goal.
The stomach's orders being louder than the captain's sometimes.
Could be. It's a theme you see again and again in these personal stories. Survival often trumped strategy.
Okay, so from logistical gambles, let's shift to the raw danger, the combat itself. Atlanta again, later that summer, August '64. Vernon talks about picket duty being incredibly hazardous.
Extremely. He was actually in charge of 2 picket posts at one point, and they were so close to the Confederate lines. I mean, really close.
How close?
So close, he says. They had to relieve the sentries, swap them out before daylight. If they did it when the sun was up, the rebels could see the movement and just open fire, pick them off.
That's nerve-wracking proximity, constant tension.
And lethal. Vernon tells this chilling story about a comrade on the line next to him. The guy gets grazed by a bullet, just a nick on the neck. You'd think. But instead of keeping his head down, the guy, in this moment of pure bravado, or maybe shock, yells across to the rebels, "You can't do that again!"
Oh, no.
Yeah. The very next shot killed him instantly, just like that. Defiance met with immediate final consequence.
Stark. Did Vernon have his own close calls like that?
He sure did. Right around the same time, same place. He'd stepped up out of the protected ditch they were using to grab some hot coffee from a buddy.
Risky move, given what just happened.
Definitely. And just as he stands up, zip, a bullet whistles right past his head. Missed him by inches.
Whew. So what did he do? Dive back down?
He started running, making a dash for the next picket post along the line. But as he's running, he catches his foot under a hidden grapevine.
Trips him up.
Sends him sprawling, face down in the dirt. And he reckons as he was falling, maybe 10 or 20 bullets snapped over the space where his head and body had just been.
So tripping actually saved his life.
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
Just pure dumb luck. A grapevine saves him from a volley.
What was the reaction from the other side?
The rebels saw him go down. They let out this huge yell, convinced they'd finally bagged a blue coat.
And Vernon, lying there playing dead.
Not quite. Get this. He doesn't jump up. He stays low, but then he starts crawling on his hands and knees back towards the coffee he'd dropped.
He went back for the coffee after nearly being killed.
That's what he says. This movement, him crawling around, obviously attracted attention. The rebels opened up again, another volley.
Which must have caused chaos.
It did. That firing triggered the Union artillery nearby to start shelling, thinking a major attack was happening. And all the commotion brought the division's picket officer rushing out to see what on earth was going on, all because Vernon wanted his coffee.
That's incredible. Why the coffee? Is it shock? Adrenaline? The need for something normal?
Who knows, right? Maybe it was just the immediate, tangible comfort available in that moment of extreme stress. Maybe it's just one of those bizarre details that gets burned into your memory because it's so incongruous with the danger. Survival wasn't always about fighting back. Sometimes it was about getting through the next minute, and maybe a hot drink felt essential.
It feels like that level of intensity, those details, would make you want to get the story right later on.
Absolutely. And Vernon was meticulous about it. He used the National Tribune years later, like in 1884, to talk about specific battles and correct what he saw as errors in other people's accounts.
Like which battle?
The Battle of Atlanta, July 22nd, 1864. He described it as one of the hottest fights of the war. Just brutal fighting.
And he used his memory of it to set the record straight.
Exactly. He wanted to confirm details. He specifically mentions seeing General McPherson, who was killed that day right along their lines for the very last time. He describes how his regiment literally jumped back and forth over their own defensive works, fighting Confederates coming from different directions as they got partly surrounded.
Real chaos.
Total chaos. And he makes a point in his article of correcting another veteran's account about who was in command. He lays it out very clearly. General Leggett led the 3rd Division. General R.K. Scott was their brigade commander, at least until he got captured during the fight.
And after Scott was captured.
Then Colonel G.F. Wiles of the 78th Ohio took over the 2nd Brigade. For Vernon, getting these names and commands right, it wasn't trivial. It was about honoring the men, the units, and the shared experience accurately. It anchored the memory.
That need for accuracy, for verification, it extended beyond just battlefield command structures too, right? Even to symbolic moments.
Yeah, definitely. Like the famous incident with the flag being raised over Columbia, South Carolina, when Sherman's army arrived in February 1865.
Vernon was there for that.
He was. He was actually sergeant in charge of a foraging party, about 30 guys from his regiment, and he happened to be standing very close to General Sherman himself, near the Saluda River, where they were putting in a pontoon bridge.
So right place, right time.
Exactly. And he recalls a staff officer suddenly pointing, getting Sherman's attention. There was a flag, an American flag, just been raised over a building in Columbia, which they were about to enter.
And Sherman saw it.
Yep. Vernon says Sherman lifted his field glasses, took a look, and said something like, "That sure is our flag, all right. Now who raised it?" There was immediate interest in who got there first.
So who did get the credit? Did Vernon know?
He heard later that evening, he says, that it was men from the 13th Iowa Infantry who had managed to get into the city first and raise the Stars and Stripes over the state capitol building. And Vernon, writing decades later, confirms it. He says they, the 13th Iowa, are entitled to the honor.
So he's acting as an eyewitness, using his memory to validate that specific historical claim.
Precisely. He's contributing his piece to the larger historical puzzle, using his presence there to verify who deserved the credit for that symbolic act.
But then
Yeah.
Then there's the memory that couldn't be easily verified, right? The one that seemed to bother him because it was so strange, so isolated.
The White Bull, yes. This is maybe the most fascinating little detail in all his writings. It comes from the Battle of Champions Hill in Mississippi back in '63.
Champions Hill, a major battle in the Vicksburg campaign. Very bloody.
Extremely. And Vernon is there with his regiment, the 78th Ohio. They're positioned on a slope, facing the Confederates across a hollow, a sort of shallow valley between the lines.
Okay, standard battle formation.
Right. But then Vernon remembers seeing something completely out of place. Amidst all the fighting, the noise, the smoke, he sees a white bull.
A white bull just walking through the battlefield.
Apparently, walking calmly along the bottom of that hollow, right between the Union and Confederate lines, while the battle is raging around it.
That's surreal. Did anyone else see it?
That was the problem. Decades later, in 1894, Vernon wrote into the National Tribune specifically about this. He said he'd asked around for years but couldn't find a single other veteran from either side who remembered seeing that bull.
So he used the paper to ask the wider veteran community.
Yes. He basically put out a query. Did anyone else see this? Where did this animal come from? Where did it go? He was trying to validate this incredibly vivid but solitary memory.
What does that tell us about memory, about war?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it, how these completely non-military, almost absurd details can get lodged in a soldier's mind, maybe even more strongly than the tactical movements or the casualty lists. And it shows the power of something like the National Tribune. It wasn't just for arguing about who was in command or who raised a
It
flag.
was for finding someone else who saw the white bull.
Exactly. It was this collective space to confirm the bizarre, the unbelievable, the things you might start to doubt yourself if nobody else remembered them. It was like this huge ongoing project of shared memory validation.
And Vernon stayed involved in that project for a long, long time.
Oh, right up until the end, it seems. We know he was living in Corning, Kansas, post-war, became something of a local leader, won prizes for agriculture, that sort of thing. But he was still writing into the Tribune and participating in veteran affairs as late as 1921.
Still verifying history.
Yep. There's a record of him responding to an inquiry in 1921 asking for names of veterans still living who had marched with Sherman to the sea. And Vernon lists 4 members of his local GRR post, including himself, who were on that march, still curating the memory almost 60 years later.
So when we pull all this together, what's the big picture Vernon gives us?
I think it's this incredible blend of the vast sweep of the war. I mean, Vicksburg, Atlanta, the Carolinas, he saw it all, but filtered through these intensely personal, often gritty, sometimes strange day-to-day experiences.
It's not just about battles won or lost, it's about finding a board to sleep on, or getting lucky with a captured dinner, or tripping over a vine at just the right second.
Exactly. And his life after the war, spending decades writing these recollections, debating details in public, it really underscores how vital those veteran newspapers like the National Tribune were. They weren't just about nostalgia, were they?
No, it sounds like they were about actively constructing and correcting the historical record from the ground up.
Right. And about confirming shared trauma, finding community, making sense of these chaotic, life-altering experiences, and maybe even finding someone else who saw that inexplicable white bull, sustaining that connection long after the guns fell silent.
So we have the official record. We know who raised the flag over Columbia, thanks partly to Vernon's eyewitness account. But his stories also highlight all these smaller moments, the burning gin, the coffee run under fire, the unexpected meal. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many undocumented acts of initiative, or just pure luck, or maybe even minor defiance, were really crucial, not just to survival, but maybe even to the outcome? And how do we even begin to look for the white bulls in our own histories, those strange, significant details that don't fit the main narrative?
That's a great question. Something for you to think about, definitely.
Indeed. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.